Good morning, everybody. It's John Phillips here from JP Mortgages doing another podcast. Today is Monday, the 10th of March 2025, and this podcast is about divorce and separation. You know I'm a one-stop shop. I do everything here, but so many phone calls come into this office, people coming through the door asking me about divorce, separation, prenups. I want to get me married, my husband's domineering, and I'm not a solicitor. This lady's a solicitor, and I've got Alison Gaddis in this morning. From Rucklidge Law Limited, who is a family law solicitor. So please watch this podcast, take the numbers at the end and emails and get in contact with Alison. Alison, thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome, John.
Really appreciate your time today. And first of all, let's just all talk about marriages in general. I have a lot of Muslim people that ring me up and come in and they're unsure about where they stand, etc. So can you explain a bit the basics, please?
Well, I think the starting position should always be, is it a legal marriage in England? Okay, so if someone was to get married in Pakistan or abroad, any country abroad, and that is a legal marriage in that country, when you come to live in this country, then that will be considered a legal marriage. Right. So you will be married, as far as the laws of England and Wales are concerned, as a married couple. These are the questions that I get asked.
Thank you. Carry on.
If you came to the country and you were unmarried, then you had a religious marriage here, but didn't register that marriage in England and Wales, then you would be considered as cohabitees.
Right.
Okay, so you wouldn't be classed as married, you would be classed as living with that person. There are some Muslim marriages where you can be registered. So some mosques do register the marriage in England and Wales. Yes. So probably the first place you should go is go back to where you were married at which mosque and find out whether that was actually registered in this country or not.
Right. That's great. Thank you so much. And also, can we also talk about, in general, a lot of people think that, they've been together 23 years, they're never married. Anybody in general, they come in, they talk to me, my husband's domineering, I want to get out of the marriage, I don't know what to do, I'm not a solicitor. Can you explain that kind of process? They've been together all these years, they've got kids, but they're never married.
Right, so then there would be cohabitees. So the first question that I would ask would be the property that you own together, whose name is that property in?
Right.
If it's in joint names, then that's absolutely fine. If it's in the joint names of the parties, then they both have equal rights to that property. Okay. If the property is not in the person's name and it's in the other party's name, then things get a little bit more complicated. Well, often a lot more complicated, because then you need to be able to establish whether you have a right to that property, a beneficial interest in the property, because the title of the property is not in your name.
Right.
I'm not sure the 5 minutes that we've got, John, would be able to cover everything that needs to do with that, because it is a very complicated area of law, and it very much relies on quite old trust law. But it's better for that person to get specific advice about that, because it depends on what contributions they've made to that property. Not just making mortgage payments, because sometimes that's not enough. If they've made payments towards the mortgage capital payments, if they've done improvements to the property and paid for those, then those will be the things where you would be trying to establish an interest in that.
Right. Property. And I suppose this all boils down to full and final settlement.
Well, they're different. So full and final settlement is to do with divorce proceedings, not necessarily to do with cohabitee disputes. So cohabitee disputes where they're not married.
Correct.
Then that's more, the initial step would be trying to negotiate with that person. If not, then approaching mediation to try to resolve those issues. And finally, you would have to go to court to establish whether you'd got a beneficial interest in that property. Usually when we talk about full and final settlement, often we're talking about divorce proceedings.
Let's carry on with that then.
Yeah, yes. So a lot of people assume in relationships that if they transfer assets following separation into the other, the other spouse's name, that's it, they're okay. It's not, okay? So marriage is a contract. It's like any other contract. It is a contract between the parties. So until you've ended that contract by way of a clean break order with the court, or an order of the court, which is made by a judge as opposed to the parties agreeing that order, then you have claims open against each other. Okay?
Right.
The only circumstance where that wouldn't happen would be if you were the respondent in the divorce proceedings and you remarried, but you would still have some claims open in respect of pensions and other assets. Okay, so you unless you have a final order in divorce proceedings for your finances, you can claim against that person open-ended, effectively. So what a lot of people don't realise is they go along, they get their own divorce, because it's very easy now to be able to issue divorce proceedings online with the online court portal. And I have a lot of clients that do that themselves, and I deal with finances. But if they don't get the final order, then any future assets that that person might have, irrespective sometimes of whether that was during the relationship. So if parties separated quite early on, say they're in their early 30s, and then one of them becomes quite well off, there is a potential claim open for that person to be able to make a claim later on. And there is established case law for that, because it's about meeting the need for housing, meeting the person's income needs. And sometimes the court cannot disregard if you've got a multimillionaire on one side and another party who has no money, even though they may have separated 15 years ago. The court would still look at what it has before it, and then it would open, obviously, lots of arguments, but potential is there, so it's better to get a clean break order.
Clean break order, thank you so much. What about the couple that's been married a lot of years and just split up many years ago, didn't do anything, 17 years later he comes back or she comes back and they want to get the divorce? How do they?
Well, that's fine. Anybody can get a divorce at any time. The fact is, the court's first thing is, did those parties reconcile? But it does, in reality, it doesn't matter so long as far as the divorce procedure is concerned. But that can impact on finances. So I do have cases like that, and they're not uncommon. It depends on what they agreed at the time.
Okay.
Sometimes. Now, if they had a marital home, for instance, and the